My family and I have lived here for part of the year for the last 5 years, and my parents met at UC Berkeley. Any Berkeley grads in the house? Yeah, the story started here. My parents came, they met as graduate students at Berkeley. My brother is named after the Lawrence Observatory. And so we used to joke that my parents got busy there, though I'm sure they didn't, because they're pretty boring Taiwanese people when it comes down to it. So then, they moved to upstate New York, had me. I was born in Schenectady, New York. My father, what, Schenectady got cheers here? Wow, that's weird. Schenectady, that's never happened before. I was born in Schenectady. My dad worked for GE and then IBM. He generated 69 US patents over his career for GE and IBM. I used to think that everyone's dad had a PhD as a kid. I remember I asked someone, it's like, what's your dad's PhD in? And then prefer to get my ass kicked. So I figured it out. I was like, oh, turns out not everyone's dad has a PhD. Oh, that's all right. So I grew up in upstate New York. I went to college, studied economics, didn't know what to do, so I went to law school, which was a mistake. And then I practiced law for 5 unhappy months. It was like, this job is terrible. So then I went home to my Asian parents and was like, this job is terrible. I'm totally going to quit and start a company. And they were like, that's a terrible idea. And I was like, oh, you watch me. So then I did it, and this company totally crashed and burned. It like had its mini rise and maximum fall. And so then my parents were still lying to their friends, telling them I was a lawyer. I was like running around trying to get better. So how many of you all are entrepreneurs, work in startups, work in tech? I'm sure a bunch of you, because of where we are. Because I know what that hustle's like. After my company crashed and burned, I was like, I want to get better at this. And so I worked at another startup, and then another startup, and then I became the CEO of an education company that grew to become #1 in the United States. And then it was acquired by a public company in 2009, so at this point my parents started being honest about what I did for a living again. And then, this was a financial crisis, which was a lousy time in a lot of the country. And I looked around, and I had personally taught the analyst classes at Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. I was like, oh my gosh, we have so many smart people doing the same shit in the same places over and over again, and they hate it, and we hate it. It's like, what is this about? So then I said, well, what can I do about that? Because you can't just be negative. You can't be like, don't do that. Like, that's stupid. And so I said, well, what would I want them to do? So I had this dream. It was like, you know, I think that they'd like to move to New Orleans or Detroit or Baltimore or Cleveland or Birmingham and build companies. I wanted them to become entrepreneurs like many of you here in this room. Or not room, it's a freaking giant soccer field. As you can tell, I'm used to being indoors. So I started Venture for America. I quit my job. I donated $120,000 to seed this organization. Started calling rich friends, being like, "Do you love America?" And then the smart among them were like, "What does it mean if I say yes?" And I said, "At least $10,000." And then they said, "I love America for $10K." And I was like, "I thought you did." And so we had like a couple $100,000. Fast forward to today, the budget's $6.5 million, thousands of applicants, hundreds of... How many of you know someone who's in Venture for America or in Venture for America? That's yes, that's what I'm talking about. And we have some VFA fellows here, Mark Chu and some others from different places where they went to these cities to build businesses. How many of you all like documentary films? How many of you have access to a Netflix password? So there's a documentary about Venture for America that's now on Netflix with an Oscar-winning filmmaker. It's called Generation Startup. And think about that for you all. It's like, I mean, this looks like Generation Startup here in this field. And so that's what I've done for the last 6.5 years. I was helping young people, help create, like Matt Shaver right there, help create thousands of jobs around the country. I started getting medals and awards. I was invited to meet President Obama at what I call the Good White House. I got to bring my wife, who got to meet the president. And I'll tell you a stupid story just because I thought it was funny. So we're in the White House, and one of the guys there is the CEO of Kind, named Lubetsky. And so someone's like, "I'm hungry," and I shit you not. He's like Batman. He like takes his jacket and was like, "Here's some Kind bars." And I was like, no way he just did that. It was like some specially designed jacket that had like hidden pockets, and he had like these flavors of Kind bars you've never seen before and have never seen since. It's like Batman. We're like a bunch of superheroes in the White House. And I was like, "What's your power?" And I was like, "I'm really smart." So, So here I'm getting medals and awards for creating jobs around the country, get a movie made about me, write a book called Smart People Should Build Things, and then Donald Trump becomes our president in